Hi, guys. First of all, happy Friday to you. Um, I hope you've had a good as week as possible between wrangling, homeschooling, changing business, changing place of work. And if you're sort of Sydney, Adelaide kind of way, the freezing cold weather that has come upon us. Um, we've just got a few people still logging on, so just bear with me at the moment. I would like to introduce you. My 4-year-old wanted to make sure if any of you have checked me out on LinkedIn before starting, you will see that I'm a chief unicorn minder. So I don't know if you can see this because I can't see myself. This is my 4-year-old's favorite unicorn, and he wanted me to make sure that the unicorn, he's not quite sure this is a webinar. I think he thinks I'm having lunch with you all. He wanted me to make sure that I'm not sure if it's a he or a she, doesn't matter, that unicorn anyway joined us for lunch today because I'm in charge of looking after them. So, bear with me one moment. I've just been told my video isn't working. Should be working now. There you go. Sorry, unicorn, poor unicorn who wasn't actually who you couldn't actually see. Let's turn this off. No. All right, perfect. We've got everybody on, I think, so that's good. Right, so I'm going to kickstart. I think people that are going to join have joined now, and I'm glad I showed you unicorn. If anyone knows my son, let him know he was part of the gang today. Never like starting on a somber note, but really in the past weeks and months for all of us, life has fundamentally changed. And I'm going to be honest, and I'm sure I know some of you, that there is really no playbook for any of us right now. And I think that's the really key thing. We are literally living on the fly, and normally I'm more than happy to wing it, but this has sort of put us all into a really uncomfortable position. And I think life is actually going to get a little bit more uncomfortable. Working conditions will not be ideal. There'll be hodgepodge all over the place, and things may get worse globally before they get better, but hopefully they don't. I'm really optimistic about the silver linings that everything has brought us right now. And I think the other major shift since the last global crisis, the GFC, was very much financial. Whereas this is, whilst it's still economic, it's also about health. And the key thing about health is that people start to really think about what it is they do have and what they value. And because this has been about health, and so the isolation and then change in how we interact as humans, we're really in this place now where people are spending more time with family, introspective as they're spending time on their own. And so things have really, really changed. And also the key thing of why you're all here to talk about employer brand is the other key major shift since, I guess, the GFC is that it's been digitization. Well, that's always hard to say when you haven't had your lunch yet. And I forgot my tea. My tea's over there. Anyway, so we've got smartphones, professional, social channels, etc., that weren't around before. So really, when you get asked the question, when you ask the question of me around the conversations I'm having of should I be heard, should we do anything in terms of the brand, the employer brand, the answer is yes. Because if you don't, people will anyway. And that's the real key shift. So each of you are going to have your unique situations within your organization. So I guess today I don't want to be too specific. I want to be relatable for any situation that you guys are going through. What I can do is help you really formulate your thought process as you think about your employer brands and how you communicate to your people. And simply that is going to be with authenticity, compassion, and clarity. And I will come back to that clarity a bit at the moment. Firstly, some of you may have seen my blog post, and apologies if you have, but I actually used this example back in the GFC of, to brand or not to brand. And in this, yes, we're sort of talking about why employer brand, but I use the example of Kellogg's. And Kellogg's opposed to two American cereal companies leading the market in the US in the late 1920s. People didn't really have ready-to-eat cereals. They were eating what we now know as porridge, oatmeal, etc. Even though it had been around for years, people really weren't into it. They were cooking these hot breakfasts. And when the Great Depression hit the US, consumer demand was in flux, and post, one of the other cereals cut back on expenses. And of course, the first thing to go is advertising. Kellogg's, however, doubled its ad budget, and really the constant advertising of a healthy instant alternatives to sustain your family through tough times, which is why I think it's relevant here, paid off. And by the early 1930s, even really as the economy sunk, Kellogg's profits had risen almost 30%. And I kind of wanted to, show you this slide. I got it off the Rice Krispies site, the growth in terms of the brand. I am not actually recommending you, increase your advertising budget exponentially now. That's not what I'm saying. The world has changed if we look at, as I said before, around social platforms, the ability to communicate. I'm just using this as an example about remaining present and engaging with your potential audiences, that's being your current employees and your candidates during times of crisis, by giving them what they need, as Rice Krispies has done. So we sort of developed this new world of work EBP framework before COVID had hit. And also, I've always forget the housekeeping. Please, post your questions at the end of this. So if you have any questions as I go through these slides, post them the questions, and I'll come off slides and into questions and try and answer them for you, because that was the whole purpose of today, rather than having individual conversations with so many clients. Apologies. But yes, we developed this sort of pre-COVID, but it was all around what we had called the future of work. The big thing, as we know, is that future of work is not the future of work, it's here. So it's now we are operating in a new world of work. But this hasn't changed this model. At the essence of all of this is the why should somebody work for an organisation. The why is the key. And if we look at this in relation to the new world of work, then the really important things around the who am I working for, what do they stand for, how do they operate, how do they do business, etc. Coupled with the employee experience, so pertinent right now. What am I going through? How am I being treated, etc. And then the external perception in market. How do people perceive your brand? And this is why I say we've sort of just had this exponential shift from future work to new world of work right here and now. And that's kind of what we're going to cover today, is how and why you can compassionately and effectively communicate, and what do people want to hear from you. So if we look at branding for the future, and when I say future now, I'm not talking about the future of work. I'm talking about the future that's here now, the future that we don't quite know what it's going to look like. There's really 6 key elements. The first one is cost. Why employer branding? I am ex-LinkedIn, for those of you who are not aware, so I do love some LinkedIn stats now and then. But we see a company with stronger employer brand, its competitors on average sees a 43% decrease in the cost per candidate they hire. More now, as our economy is unstable, and discretionary budgets, hiring budgets, etc., all being either frozen or cut or rejig. Really, really important. And this is where you can start affecting that without a cost base. Trust, really important. We know that candidates trust companies' employees more than the company to provide credible information. We're going to go into each of these in detail. 3, living with purpose. 4, the massive societal shifts we're seeing now. People need to work to fit into their lives, not the other way around. And beliefs. We'll look a bit about beliefs and what a negative reputation can cost you, and also awareness. Something I'm extraordinarily passionate about is the fact that the employer brand and the consumer brand should unite. So this first one of cost per hire, I'm not, this is absolutely, there's a reason this is a blank slide. We're not going to talk about this today because you all know this and that's why you're on the call. I am not asking, as I said, to suddenly spend, you know, a bucket load of money. If you've got it, amazing. And I'm so jealous of you right now. But we know that a strong employer brand gives you the competitive edge. And you are going to need to hire again. But I think what's really, really important is the fact that hard times really define who you are. So if you look at this number 2 piece around that kind of reputation and that trust element. So what do people want to know now about you? How you treat your people is incredibly important. How you're communicating with them, engaging with them, talking to them, how leaders are trusting, respecting, what did you do to help them? These are really specific questions for you to think about if you are thinking, I need to start getting some content out there and influencing the conversation about me. So how are you supporting remote working in terms of well-being? What are you providing for them? Are there programs that are helping them? Are you giving them time out? How are you supporting your stood down employees? And these last two are really key. Either stood down employees now, and we've got the job keeper, which, you know, is going to absolutely help from a financial perspective. But how are you really supporting them through this time and communicating? And why have you had to make these difficult decisions? Because the other thing to remember about the job keeper is that in a few months there won't be a job keeper, and these stood down employees may or may not come back. There may be redundancies, and they all want to know this. And how you communicate and act with them now will build their trust in you and how they're telling other people that you are treating them. And that's why it's really important to understand as an employer brand person or comms person how you're communicating this both internally and externally. And I use Andy Penn as an example of his external comms. I've worked with Telstra over the last 7 years and through their business transformation. And what they have done, they've had to make some really hard decisions about their people over the last few years through the business transformation. And they've been, and I think they've been brilliant at communicating the authentic, honest truth about changing business and decisions they've had to make. And I use this example of Andy Penn commenting on the video that circulated online, showing one of their Telstra store members being racially abused, and he called it out. Now, the thing about this is that person and that person's team members, everybody involved is going to remember that Telstra and Andy stood by them in these times where emotions are fraught as it is, and said this is not good enough and this is not acceptable behaviour. And there were people commenting, saying on their brand, on their consumer brand, saying, you know, you haven't got back to me, I haven't got 5 hours to wait, etc. And I probably, you know, would argue whether it's obviously Andy Penn in this situation actually responding, but saying, you know, I'm sorry you've had experience, a negative experience, you know, please contact us, etc. But it was authentic and they acknowledged it. And they were very clear that there was a situation, and people will remember an organisation standing and supporting by their people. Now, what your employer brand should look like now. So I'm sure some of you recognise Maslow's hierarchy, and that we really need 5 categories of needs, that's being physiological, safety, love, esteem, and self-actualization. In this theory, each of these levels need to be met, or the higher levels emerge about people, what they want to think and feel, when they have sufficiently met or satisfied the previous need. So if we look at number 3 about people want to live with purpose, and in this extraordinary time, people more than ever want to live with purpose. So your role, and that's why I use actually Maslow's hierarchy, is to think about how do you focus on aligning your culture and value with your talent. And I've been talking about that again for a while with some of my clients, and some amazing people are doing that already. But as I said, we've had this exponential shift of thinking the future of work was 5, 6 to 10 years away. It's now here and now. So it's really important more than ever. And as we look at this hierarchy system, progress is often interrupted by a failure to meet a lower level need, whether that's in your personal life, whether it's within an organization. And life experiences, divorce, death, loss of a job, may cause, an individual or team or an organization to fluctuate through these levels of the hierarchy. Now, I know some people say this is outdated, but I actually hold my hand up and say I absolutely disagree. And in fact, I think research conducted by Facebook in 2018 really challenged this theory. And then they found through researching their employees across all ages that they want three things in common. So after achieving the basic needs in life and a degree of, security, which will be those physiological and those safety needs, that three things were really important. One is absolutely a career and having a job. So this is the Facebook research, having a job that provides autonomy, allows employees to use their strengths and promote self-learning and development. Now, I think, absolutely that equals esteem. All of those things is that recognition and freedom and respect and status. And secondly, they wanted a sense of community, which is about people, which is sort of feeling respected, cared about, and recognized by others, which drives our sense of connection and belonging, which is number three, belonging. It's so your role as an organization or as an employer brand person married with HR and L&D and culture is to really focus on communicating and creating this love and belonging and esteem. And the third one they found that people wanted was cause. It's about purpose and a feeling that you can make a meaningful impact, identifying with an organization's mission and believing it does some good in the world, and it's a source of pride. Now that's 5, self-actualization, the desire to be the most or the best version of oneself. And we talk a lot about self-actualization, about authenticity, and, bringing your whole self to work. So I would, I actually challenge, I think this is absolutely valid now more than ever. And we've talked a lot about stepping back to basics and people reevaluating, consumerism's down, and people are realizing, I wish I realized quite as well as I ought to, that we don't need new things. I may have bought a pair of UGG boots. I'm moving house and I pattern them away. Anyway, that's an aside. But as people want less, that they're realizing they can do with less, as they can't go out and do all the things. And I've got a beautiful colleague who was saying they hadn't had their hair done and was showing me their sort of the roots growing out, and I thought they looked amazing. It was like, this is a balayage, you don't need to do it, but we're so used to living the way we do in a certain way. So I think living with purpose, and you as employer brand or HR specialist have a role to communicate really in this space of the hierarchy for how your employees and potential candidates can really align their culture and values with you as an organization. So what are people going to want to know? I said a bit about, moving into the future, as in, it's not just what they want to know now, which we've covered, that bit of wellbeing, look after me, but what are people going to want to know going back into the future? So as I mentioned before, there's been more than ever now this real massive seismic shift into how people want to live and work. And they also, I love the phrase, I did think about the thing up here, the cat meme of what has been seen cannot be unseen. But people have now seen a new way of working. And I think organizations have as well, but your current employees again and potential employees have, some people may never want to work from home ever again once remote work's over. But some people may want to do it permanently, or a balance, or move out of the city, etc. And so people will really understand that they want work to fit into their lives. So some of the questions that you can be answering and talking about are, why do we have to go back to working in an office? If they do answer them and tell them the answer to that, do you trust me? And trust is very much around, do you trust me to get my job done? So how do you operate in a results-oriented work environment? Do your values align with mine? Going back to how you treated people and the trust, do I believe in you? What have you, and as an organisation, been doing for community, for your people? What does, what do you stand for? Also, how are you going to look after me? And you can see how this is a gradual shift from communicating now to the future, but how it all ties together. What are you as an organisation going to do to remain sustainable? Which sort of ties in with what does the foreseeable future look like for your organisation? The thing is, you may not know, and that is okay. But worse than not know, people don't like not knowing the answers or thinking one thing and Chinese whispers or making guesses. So the more from an employer brand perspective you can be open, clear and honest about these questions and answers, the more people will understand and retain that emotional connection to you. Because remember, right now, it's really hard to be emotionally connected. At Flex Careers, we should practice what we preach, and we do mostly, but we're incredibly busy reacting to this new world of work. And now and then I'm chatting with some of my teammates, like, oh my God, I miss you. I miss that big little space, and people are a connection to your organization. So you can do a lot of things around this to help people understand who and what you stand for and what you are. So belief. Number 5, negative reputation costs companies at least 10% more per hire. Right at the beginning, remember I said, do I or don't I brand? Well, like I said, people are going to be talking about you whether you do or whether you don't. And whatever your role, you're obviously an employer brand custodian. Otherwise, you wouldn't be on the webinar, unless you're some of my colleagues here just to say hello. But if we look at this in a tweet shared by journalist Ben Smith, it's an example of it's a message that Wall Street Journal's managing editor sent to staff about what the paper expected from them as they went to work from home. And I'm just giving you a second to look through this. I saw this and I had to Google to check it was real. So like, this is absolutely appalling, and I don't know if it was meant with good intent to help people manage this time, but and it's interesting, obviously one of the world's biggest brands, but it's going to be interesting how people reacted and felt about this as they came through the other side. But what it does show is brands really being put to the test as they look to support and help employees in this time, whilst also managing, the challenges that their business needs. And obviously, Wall Street Journal would have been frantic right now. I mean, they would have been, quick. We've got to respond. We've got to post. We've got to get this out. We've got to do research. We've got to validate. So I understood the intent of saying, we're under immense pressure, we need you there, but there's a way to communicate. So, make best friends with employee comms, make sure people understand the responsibility to your, organization. And then if things like this happen, make sure you respond. Don't let it sort of, fly under the radar. And I know it's sometimes easier said than done to manage an organization if you're, 500, 1,000, 10,000. But it is your role to help the business understand how important this is right now. So number 6, this is the space I've worked in probably for the last 15 years. I think one line in my LinkedIn profile that hasn't changed is that I want to increase the synergy between HR and marketing, because I firmly believe that employer brands and consumer brands should unite. And I've spent now 15 years in Australia, really helping organisations doing that, so that their employer brand is a lived reality, internal and external, and absolutely aligns with consumer brands. Because basically, if they're not, an incorrectly communicated or badly done employer brand can actually break a consumer brand. So you really need to ensure, and this is what I help organisations do, understand that leaders leaders, C-suite, everyone in your organization understands the cultures and the values and how that helps drive a business from a consumer perspective. And as we take that into the current market now, it's again even more pertinent. So as we see blurred lines between where people work now, temporarily or permanently, and I think about some of the amazing Qantas guys. I saw one of them, and I love this guy, and he was a steward, and he was working in Woolworths right now. He looked brilliant. I mean, obviously you can imagine directing people where to go, but this is not normal. People, you know, whether they're an employer or candidate now, they could be a client or a consumer. There's so many blurred lines between where people are working, the shift between people, how we work together. So it's really, I think, more pertinent than ever, as I keep saying, that your brand and consumer brand, employer brand, consumer brand unite. And I used, I've been a Virgin Australia fan for a long time, and I'm behind you. If anyone knows anyone about Virgin, I'm behind you getting through this, guys. Because I look at the example, what does that actually look like? How do you visualize an employer and consumer brand united? And I think Virgin Australia do that incredibly well. I love the fact, you know, our mates at Rex Airlines and Jetstar couldn't help but join in turn. If you haven't seen this video, just look at it and smile at, you know, just the support for Virgin and what they're going through, because their people live their brand is so palpable. And then on a different sort of angle of that, I used Energy Australia here. They've actually set up a project team to actually look at how they come back from these times. Well, we call it Build Back Better, but they've, you know, looked at they've got a project team actually set up to ensure that as an organisation they come back better than they were, and they're bringing on people from purpose, and they're a really strong that kind of blur line, because obviously every one of their employees is also a customer. And so they're really saying, you know, how do we come back? What do we learn? What do we take from this? And they're communicating it to all their employees. They're getting, you know, doing research and getting data to show what works, what doesn't work. So from an employer brand perspective, it puts them in a really strong place about what the future looks like for them. So really two really good examples here. So those are the 6 steps. I hope, you know, and I am fully plagiarizing Simon Sinek here. Love to say this was me, but, you know, play the, you know, what he, in essence, he talks about is playing the long game, not the short game. It's not about reacting to the market now. It's about taking this time to think, okay, think through some of these questions, think through these elements, think, where do I want to be as an organization? Who do I want to be aligned with me? And over the next 6-12 months, we do not know what the future looks like. But we do know there is going to be another side to this. And as I said earlier, when I was talking about communicating with clarity, it's a bit of a, you know, it's a bit of a coin, flipping the coin situation. 2 sides of the coin is that we don't have clarity what the other side looks like, but we can communicate what we know with clarity. So when I say communicate with clarity, I mean be visible and be honest and be present. And think about Maslow's hierarchy and how you can fulfill some of those needs. You don't need to change the world right now, and you don't need to be a massive brand, be a smaller organization. But what you do need to do is remain human and make sure you're communicating with people that you need to. So it's 1 o'clock now, I think. I'm going to close this down and open out to some questions. I'm glad I've held you all. Nobody's dropped off, which always makes me feel a lot happier. And you should just be able to see me now. I can't see myself. And I'm going to sort of, open up to, as I said, some questions. Just waiting for some to come through. Let's see what's going on here. It's always when you get to this point and you can only see yourself. I can't see any questions just at the moment, as in I haven't got the questionability. So I'm just going to wait for somebody to ping some through to me. And that is sort of your burning questions, whether it's for me or whether it's for Unicorn. I'm still in charge, Chief Unicorn Minder. Okay, let's look. Here, I'm just pinging to turn this on. Okay, all right. Okay, all right, let's see what's going on. Okay, so David's asking, is it okay to, is it okay to host content? Oh, from employees. Yeah, great question. Great question. Look, I think, and actually I didn't touch on that today in sort of the terminology of employer brand, but brand advocate's a massive one right now. I think everything I was talking about today really points to how you keep engaged and build brand advocacy in this time. Really, really important. So yes, absolutely okay. The thing I would say is, do you remember when this all started and everyone started posting their images of everybody on Zoom and, you know, multiple Zoom images at the same time, and then people are sort of, they're all talking about, you know, juggling the kids and things like that. I would suggest that you definitely think about how you perhaps build your content calendar for employees, or how you talk to us and how you communicate or share stuff from your employees. Because remember, this is still about you. So there's so much noise out there. You really need to cut through. So think about some of the things we talked about in terms of your organization, you know, and if your employees are sharing things about how you've helped them, programs you've supported them with, you know, what they're perhaps doing to help the community right now, what you're doing as an organization, you know, meetings they've had about the future of the business, anything obviously without releasing any potential IP. And I think that's really important, because going back to when I was saying about people trust, I think it's number 3, I can't remember now, but people trust your employees more than they trust you. That comes into that side of it. So you can say what you like about what you're doing, but people are going to be more likely to believe your employees. So I actually think that's a great question, and how you can do that tactically is perhaps identify, as you would do normally, some people within your organization that you think would be good at sharing this, and help them with perhaps content and structure around it. So whether that's leaders within the organization or people leaders, or just people in the team who, you know, maybe are socially savvy or great at content. I think those are the sort of people you will identify to help share your content. I hope that answered that one. Let me see if there's let's pick out another one. Let's see. Oh my gosh, scrolling through these. Haha, yes, okay. Another good question, Sarah. Does my old sorry, does my old employer brand still stand? Should I still be looking at some of the old messages? My answer is right now, if any of those messages align to some of the things we've looked at today in terms of relevancy, then yes. But otherwise, I would say hold forces, because your employer brand of 2 months ago was likely to be around things like learning, maybe learning development, or internal mobility, or global travel, or those things. So my suggestion is to step back and have a look at some of your employee value propositions and see which have halted for now. So things like global organization. Yes, there'll still be connectivity, but if somebody wants to move around, they may not be able to move around or go to another office for another 12 months. So I would focus, that's an example of things you can't affect right now. So I would focus your intentions on the things you can influence, which may be things such as obviously flexibility, but let's take that. If the new world work is how and where I work, you know, talk about the things that you're doing to change that, for example. And things like, you know, like if your value proposition is around, you know, open door policies, well, to leaders, is that realistic right now? How busy are leaders can be? How much attention can they give to their employees? It's not really an open door policy right now. So I would really, I'm not saying scrap your employer brand of, you know, 2 or 3 months ago. What I'm saying is take a good look at it and think about, okay, what can we still leverage on? We don't need to change what can we leverage on. What is just not relevant right now? And what perhaps can I change? And what are the stories I am telling now? Because you want to tell all this story. So the thing about the new world work, or the way we live now, and especially now in a really noisy environment, is chances are you're not going to stand out unless you've got an incredibly compelling story to tell right now. That's just the reality of it. Because A, increase in social use in posting content has gone up, but B, people are sort of just flicking through. So my suggestion from a sort of efficiency perspective is just keep talking slowly, softly, just keep consistent messaging out. So rather than trying to just go blast with one message, just keep telling those stories and again, engaging your employees around that and getting them to help you on this. I hope that answered that one for you, Sarah. Just have a look at another one. Yeah, okay, interesting. Okay, Karen's question is about employer and consumer brands. How do we get that to work? She's saying basically there's usually a fight of who owns employer brands. So if we're trying to connect the employee and consumer brand or corporate brand, how do we do that? Yeah, great question. I think I said it earlier. HR, marketing, comms, some organizations do it incredibly well. Some find it a lot harder. I would take the time now while you can to connect with your HR people, to connect with your marketing people, comms people, and work out what some of their stories are. Set up a shared content calendar or resource place, which is really, really easy. And share content, get them to help you with resources. And I think this is actually I was just having a think there. That's the problem with answering questions on the fly. This is a really, really, really great chance actually to start getting aligned with how you're talking to people and how you're aligned from that corporate and employer brand perspective. Get aligned on the strategy. Where's your future? Where do you want to be? Who can you get to help within the business to tell that story? Who owns what? Be very clear perhaps about the parameters now, but think about those things around, you know, sort of that sense of belonging as you look at Maslow's hierarchy and think about, okay, from a people perspective and a business perspective, how can you bring the two together to tell the story about your organization? And I think this could be an amazing opportunity as organizations and leaders really see that an employer brand and people are the essence of the business. And this will have highlighted it so much more now. And think about flexibility being a massive one, and how people work. How have people talk about things like, are you doing a blue team and red team coming back into the organization? How have people felt through this? And think about, you can be leaders here from employer HR, TA perspective, saying, okay, now's the chance for us to make our organization, or help our organization build that better the best we can, allowing people the trust and the freedom they need to work in a way that works for them. I think leaders now will probably be more engaged more than ever. If you've ever tried or struggled to change the way people work, or change the mindset, I think now's the time to do it. And that's a whole other conversation, so I didn't really dive into it, but I think it's really important for an employer brand perspective, as part of your comms, how, when, and who are people going to work in the future, because that's what they're caring about. And they are going to care about just coming back to a job, but more than ever, how are you going to align? And that's where HR and marketing come together, because marketing don't have the intel that HR have, and HR tend not to have the resources that marketing have to create that into a compelling story. So, look, I'm really sorry. There's a whole heap of questions here. I had tried to answer everybody's questions, but what we will do is take note. We've got all the questions, records of them. And we will follow up with a blog post. I absolutely want you to be able to reach out to me with any questions if you need to. I'm just going to share my details for you here. You should be able to see them. If I haven't answered everything, and I'm really sorry, it's often hard to do, and then I had a couple of really, really good questions, but I want to keep this, I don't want to go on for too much longer. So if I can help you, let me know. Good luck. Stay safe, happy, look after each other. And remember, your time is now. And as I said, the silver lining is that now is the time to influence change and be the organisation you want to be. So thank you all for your time. I hope you have great weekends. It's Friday. If you're in New South Wales, some of the laws have changed. So I imagine you are going to be connected with loved ones and family. Obviously, just 2 people at a time, plus the kids. So I think, there's going to be a lot more smiles as we go about now, as people start reconnecting with people. And I think this is again, great opportunity for you guys to start connecting with people at scale again. So thank you so much again. It's been wonderful. Happy Friday. Have a great weekend. Hopefully talk to you soon. Thank you. Take care.